Moving right along on today's show, before I get into the New York Jets and how they've begun their OTAs period of the offseason, I want to mention to you guys one last time on today's show. If you have any questions or comments you want to make, use the tip and donations link you see on your screen. GSMCPodcast.net enables me to see your question pop up in my chat box. That way I can read it on air and get your guys' thinking or beliefs on anything I say or any of the topics. It's a massive help for this show. And as always, we'd greatly appreciate it anytime you guys are able to do that. So again, the tip and donations link is gsmcpodcast.net, which means I can move on to the next topic on hand. Recapping a little bit of what's being said, what's going on at the New York Jets OTA practices. They just began them as well this week. It's funny because a lot of people will gravitate to the Jets to see, how everything's going, how everything's developing, how's Aaron Rodgers looking. And it is just ironic a little bit how Robert Saleh made it a point at the beginning of this offseason that he wanted to fly under the radar a little bit, that he was sort of glad that after last year, after all that happened in the offseason, they could sort of relax a little bit and just be a little bit less conventional and always be in the news around the NFL compared to last offseason where they brought in Nathaniel Hackett to try and lure Aaron Rodgers in. Was Aaron Rodgers going to join? At the end of the day, he did. Then he gets injured. Then they were on Hard Knocks and stuff like that. So there was a lot going on outside of just football. Now, they're not going to be on Hard Knocks, but the level of attention still remains as high as it did last year, just in terms of football. Because you have Aaron Rodgers healthy now. This is actually the first time since last August that the media has their opportunity to see Aaron Rodgers at practice when well over a year now. So that's something new and why so many people have eyes on the New York Jets just to see how Aaron Rodgers is feeling moving out around there. And that's probably the biggest story at the OTAs at this moment. How did Aaron Rodgers look on Tuesday in his first practice since, January when the games really didn't matter, or late December where the Jets really had no chance at the playoffs? Well, on Tuesday, Aaron Rodgers on the team drills and on the 7-on-7s went 13 for 15 on the throws, 3 touchdowns, and was 5 for 5 on 7-on-7 drills. Not really missing a step there for Aaron Rodgers, just seemingly stepping into the role of the starting quarterback, almost like he didn't get injured at all, honestly, last year with how great it looks on paper, according to these reports from the media that was there. A ton of great reviews on top of the performance that I just laid out there for you guys. Defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich referencing Aaron Rodgers as finding the fountain of youth this offseason for how great Aaron Rodgers looked and how seamlessly he just transitioned into this offseason without, again, looking like he tore his Achilles at all. Rodgers also commented on the entire attention around them this offseason and how there is a lot of pressure on them, but his point of view is, he said, if I don't do what I know I'm capable of doing, we're all probably out of here. So I kind of like that pressure, though, and am embracing it. That is what Aaron Rodgers said. You don't usually hear quarterbacks, players talk about it so honestly like that. He clearly acknowledges the fact that if he's not playing up to the level, then this whole thing with him being the quarterback for them, Robert Saleh's time's probably done in New York. Nathaniel Hackett is probably moving on. Aaron Rodgers is probably moving on after this season. That is a lot of pressure, not something that many quarterbacks, I think, would have the courage to put out there in the media to sort of elevate it and grow it into a bigger monster than it already is. But Aaron Rodgers seems to like it. I'm sure a lot of fans will like that approach, and he seems to be doing very well early on, but I'm sure that'll be monitored as the offseason goes on. In other news around the New York Jets, as big of a story potentially to Aaron Rodgers is how that offensive line is sort of developing. Tyron Smith actually practiced on Tuesday to start off the OTAs period because he is an older player. His health is in question. He hasn't been the healthiest in recent years, so the fact that he was out there was good, but on the other side, Elijah Vera Tucker, their new offensive lineman, John Simpson, and Morgan Moses didn't practice at all on Tuesday. All five of them haven't been on the field together as of this moment. Three of the five of them also are brand new to the New York Jets team and just trying to learn a whole new offense. So, not ideally what you want to see out there out of your offensive line. You want to get them as many reps together as you can. And Robert Saleh acknowledged that he wanted and needed to have all five of them out there, but he did seem pretty confident that it would only be a matter of time before everybody got to see all five offensive linemen out there. But for right now, that still remains, a bigger question for the New York Jets at this point. Moving on also now to the defense, again on Jeff Ulbrich. His defense usually doesn't follow or doesn't have a lot of movement in it, stemming from his time with the Seattle Seahawks. It brings up the idea of Sauce Gardner traveling, moving around, and sort of following the opposing team's wide receiver number one. He hasn't really done it at all through his first 2 years in the NFL, but Robert Saleh said that they plan on having Gardner move a lot more around this year and sort of follow the wide receiver ones, because last year they felt that opposing teams just simply stopped targeting the side of the field that Sauce Gardner was on. So at that point, he is still impacting the game. He's covering off a whole side of the field, but he isn't really making a big impact that he is capable of doing if teams just simply don't throw at him. With all the motion and movement that you have on offense, they can get their number one receiver open, and Sauce Gardner can't really do too much about it if he's not allowed to move. This year, Robert Saleh said that will be the case, and Sauce Gardner is up for it in year 3, has deemed himself as the best corner in the league, and really wants to go out there and prove it by following around guys all over the field. How he takes on that challenge will be something to watch as well, because from all you hear from defensive backs, playing on one side of the field, you sort of get used to it and knowing where the boundaries are, and playing off of that, you get pretty comfortable doing it, just playing one side. How he follows and adjusts to that will be something interesting as well, I think. And just also on other notes around the New York Jets OTAs, the excitement over Haason Reddick from defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich was pretty great. Haason Reddick hasn't been out there as of yet, but it did hurt to lose Bryce Huff, but bringing in Haason Reddick and all that he's done in recent years certainly has defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich pretty happy. Also, the Rodgers to Garrett Wilson connection was in full effect on Tuesday. They looked pretty much in sync right from the start. They had a couple of highlight plays on the New York Jets defense, a couple of good catches and highlight catches from Garrett Wilson, which is something you'd love to see. Finally seeing that connection between Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, almost really seeing the ceiling and what kind of heights Garrett Wilson can reach with a level of quarterback that Aaron Rodgers is. That's exciting to follow as well. Also, on the offensive side of the ball, Robert Saleh is allegedly taking a larger role in the offensive play calling. Woody Johnson, the New York Jets owner, has said it would happen, and also Aaron Rodgers confirmed it, that Robert Saleh has been more involved on the offensive side of the ball. Usually he is more hands-on on the defense because that's where he comes from his time with the San Francisco 49ers, and it all comes off of the back of that story I mentioned, I want to say last week, on the New York Jets looking for other options outside of Nathaniel Hackett, sort of losing confidence in him after last season, but they didn't find anybody else to sort of replace him or one-up him in the pecking order. Instead, Robert Saleh is taking in a larger role on offense. Whether or not that means calling the plays or just giving his input will be something certainly intriguing to watch as the offseason goes on. And also, as a standout, rookie wide receiver Malachi Corley, other than making himself famous by saying he's staying with Aaron Rodgers in his guest house, he is also getting numerous good reviews from his early performance in OTAs, has really stood out from a physicality point of view with how he plays, how aggressive he is at the point of attack. His explosiveness is something that the New York Jets are really excited about, and Robert Saleh also said that he is becoming a guy that they want to get the ball in his hands as much as possible. Very good praise early on for a rookie wide receiver. Not jumping off of any stat sheet early on, but it's certainly somebody to keep an eye on as OTAs continues. But that's really the most of what's going on with the New York Jets so far. Still early doors, but some encouraging signs if you're a fan. Aaron Rodgers looks good. You have some guys stepping up. And Robert Saleh taking in more of a toll on offense. How that is going to affect them going forward will be determined later on. But that'll do it for that segment. We have one more on today's agenda to talk about the NFL integrating a new optical tracking system to determine the yard to gain situations that find themselves a lot of times in football. How it impacts the game, how they'll sort of try it out in the preseason will be coming up in just a few seconds. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.